Paul Harvey, if you remember him. He used to have, what was it, Paul Harvey in the news. It's a very popular newscaster. But he reported one time at the 12 o'clock news that the U.S. Marine Corps used dowsing with 100% effectiveness on the Viet Cong to find them in their tunnels by the water content in their body. 100% accuracy. Now, the government doesn't like to tell us that they know about these supernatural powers and that they use them all the time. The CIA has hired many of these remote viewers, psychics, and psychic assassins too.
Welcome to another episode of the Sensible Hippie Podcast, and I'm your host, the Sensible Hippie. Today, we are thrilled to have Adam Bergstrom back on the show. Our guest today, he is no stranger to the world of health and holistic living. He's a renowned expert in the field of nutrition, a prolific author, and a voice that has been at the forefront of health conversations for decades. His wisdom has been sought after by those seeking to understand the intricate connection between diet, health, and longevity. Meet Adam Bergstrom, a dedicated advocate for solar nutrition. Today, we are going to dive into the intriguing world of Edgar Cayce and dowsing. But before we jump in, I want to say a big mahalo to all of my YouTube and podcast ohana and all of my followers. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to give us the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and share this episode. Now, without further ado, let's meet Adam Bergstrom.
Cayce just he developed a aphonia, which is like he lost his voice, so he had no voice.
He did?
So someone suggested hypnotism, and so a hypnotist came into town and hypnotized him and asked him, "What's wrong with you?" And in a perfectly clear voice, he told him what to do. And then the hypnotist was amazed that he could talk so clearly and give such exact directions on how to get his voice back. So on a hunch, he asked about someone else who was in the room. And then Cayce diagnosed him and told him what to do. And finally, he could basically talk to people from, say, 1,000 miles away. It didn't matter. You just gave your name, identification, and off you went.
Wow.
So he was a highly unusual person, but there are other cases too of that too.
He emphasized the importance of the body's energy centers. In your experience, I guess, is this, how critical?
We do have a chakra system. Yes, in fact, there's two of them.
So we have two. Could you explain that?
First of all, we have a chakra system that is associated with the sperm and one with the ovum. And when we're joined together as a sperm and an ovum, the place that it's joined is the medulla oblongata, which is at the very back of the head. That's where the sperm meets the ovum, and it's the only instantaneous part of the body. If an assassin wants to kill somebody, if he shoots them in the brain, he can yell out. But if you hit the medulla, there's no time lag. You can't yell out. You're dead immediately. That's where the sperm met the ovum. So you have a reflex chakra system that starts at the tailbone and goes up to the center of the forehead. And from there on, they call that the 10th door. And you have an ovum system that goes all the way to the back of the medulla. So people think that they're going to go and get transcended by going out the top of their head, which is the 1,000-petal lotus and all that. But actually, that's fictional, because once you enter the door, then that's where the actual journey of liberation, you would call it, I guess, starts. All the other things you can get all kinds of psychic powers and everything. That's called Kundalini, but Kundalini will not free you from the matrix. And in India, they call it Maya. Basically, the illusion that there is a difference between things happening. Uh, While we're actually in a movie show, and as Yogananda put it, in a movie show, what you do is you find the projectionist. And that's how you free yourself. Otherwise, you can have all kinds of powers in game, just like Neo did. And if you've probably seen The Matrix, the movie, where he at the end he has the power to fly around and do things because he's not attached. He knows it's all a dream, and then he works within the program. But he can leave it anytime too. Now, leaving it, some people, including Carl Jung and Donald Lay, knew that transcendence really doesn't do anything because you're out of the show. The trick is once you realize it's a show, you can come back and have fun. And you can go out of it when you want to and in. Of course, we all go out of it when we go to sleep at night. We go into Delta, and in Delta, there is no pictures, there's no dreams in Delta. It's just total unconsciousness. But for someone who masters the matrix, they can actually get out of it anytime they want to and be awake at all times and aware. So, anyway, these are the powers we really have, all of us to a greater or lesser degree. And one of the reasons we don't exhibit them is was explained by a Donald Lay one time to a group of us. He said, "Okay, you're driving down the highway and you come behind a car on a two-lane road. Uh, do you pass him, the slow car? Do you hit your brake, or do you follow behind him?" And of course, people eventually will say, "Well, you pass them." Why? How do you know to pass them? And no one seems to get that. But the answer is because someone told you you could do it. See, and in our society, when we're born, we're told you can't do this and you can't do that because it's the science. Science says you can't do that. You have the amazing Randy and these skeptical people saying it can't be done. Now, there's counterfeit. But as Rumi said, wherever there's counterfeit, it means there was a real thing that it was modeled on. And that's the same with psychic powers. So we really have a lot of these powers that can be used for good or bad. Usually, when you use them for good, you have better results on them and you can continue with them. Sometimes people have force of will that they can use it, and voodoo, they call it, and different things of that nature. Black magic, whatever.
You mentioned that we don't leave through the top of our head. Where do we leave at then?
The medulla, and we
Oh,
don't
the
leave it
back.
all because there's
Oh,
no
we don't leave
place to
that.
go. See, there's a mistake about astral projection. People think you leave your body, but the truth is we're out of our body all the time, and we're in our body all the time, but we identify with the in breath. Here I am, I'm me, but we don't identify with the out breath, which is oxygen. Consciousness is not in the nervous system. Consciousness is oxygen. So wherever oxygen is, even in space, it's not totally a vacuum. There's oxygen even in space. And so everywhere there is consciousness.
Radionics. I think they operate, from what I read, energy within your body, and they can treat diseases. I forget the creator of that. He actually became a millionaire back in those days in early 1900s. I think it was 1900s to 1910. He made a
It might
million
have been
dollars.
Abrams. Abrams. Does that sound familiar? He
It
was
might be,
one of
yeah.
the early promoters of it who had machines. Now some of that is a scam.
Hmm.
But actually, you can use detectors for people who need outside type, it's basically a pendulum with a machine. So radionics, basically pendulum, all of that, we have that energy within us to do it. Anyway, the powers, we often need a focus, and whatever you can determine, whether it's a wand. Paul Harvey, if you remember him, he used to have, what was it, Paul Harvey in the news at noon all the time. And he was a very popular newscaster. But he reported one time at the 12 o'clock news that the U.S. Marine Corps used dowsing with 100% effectiveness on the Viet Cong to find them in their tunnels by the water content in their body. 100% accuracy. Now, the government doesn't like to tell us that they know about these supernatural powers and that they use them all the time. The CIA has hired many of these remote viewers, psychics, and psychic assassins, too. They made a movie, the man who killed goats or whatever it was, with George Clooney, and that was based on it. But they made it a comedy that it wasn't really effective. But actually, people can do that. Voodoo is very real. Psychic healing is very real. You can go on both ways. We can use these powers for anything. And the more you have your energy up, your chi, your prana, your orgone, whatever you want to call it, the less vulnerable you are to psychic attacks, which are very real. Some people can really mess with your energy. Some do it by suggestion. And then there really is a mesmerism where you affect people at a distance. It's more powerful when people have met or been in association. That's why mothers often know when their children are in trouble. There's a very direct connection between them, too. And the mothers often know when there's a problem and often can be affected. Look at the trauma that Debbie Reynolds went through when her daughter died. She was dead 2 days later by being associated too closely, because she could have kept living and the memory of her daughter could have been continued. But people don't think that way. They're traumatized, and so they feel their life is gone anyway, so they just off themselves. Most death is it's planned according to O'Donnell Lay, but we have a say in it. If you don't want to go and you really put up that type of fight, you don't go. So that's kind of a summary across the board of psychic powers and how we use energy. And also, have you ever heard of Arrigo?
No.
Arrigo was the surgeon of the rusty knife. And I happened to meet, let me think of his name, Harry Belker, I believe it was. And he had department stores around the country, and he was an advisor to the Phoenix Metaphysical Bookstore in Houston, Texas, that I managed. And he would give us reports on who was a phony and who was real. Well, he went down with Dr. Pajarich down to Brazil and checked out Arrigo, the surgeon of the rusty knife. He would do a cataract operation on people with a rusty knife with no anesthetic. Now, he said they did experiments. You can't even touch the eye without screaming. It's so painful. And I used to work in a company that made tonometers where you just touch the eye to get a reading. And they had trouble with me. I would flinch all the time and yank back when they told me just to stand still. So can you imagine cutting into the eye? He also did all kinds of other psychic surgeries on people, famous people, the president of Brazil, basically their main rock and roll singer at the time, their main football player, or I guess it's soccer down there, and all kinds of things. They locked him up in jail because it was a Catholic country at that time for practicing psychic woo-wooism. But when he went to went to the prison, the guards came in for treatments and allowed people to stream in by the hundreds. They just left it open because he was so well known. And so finally they just let him go out of prison. The president gave him a pardon because he'd saved his son's life. And then he predicted that he was going to die early, and he did. I think it was an auto accident or something like that. But he was one of the most remarkable of all. Now, what was the mate? John of something that was on Oprah. I could tell right away he was a phony. Uh, he he was also a sexual predator apparently and a lot of other things. But a lot of people raved about him, thought he was the new Arrigo, and everything like that. But it was evident that he was not. But Arrigo was the real deal. Yeah.
Interesting. And what kind of style of techniques did he use? It was his own, basically?
He claimed he was possessed by a German soldier who had died in World War One. Who knows? So he wrote prescriptions too, medical prescriptions. He didn't even know what the drugs were. He was pretty much an uneducated, ignorant peasant. And suddenly he's writing these prescriptions, and they look at him. They're really drugs. These are real, and they go and they find out they're accurate prescriptions. And other times he would use the rusty knife or whatever was handy. Uh, he worked on cancers, all kinds of things, and he would not charge a penny, and he would work on, if I remember correctly, 30, 40, 50 people a day would just line up, and he'd do the cataract surgeries like in a minute. Like they do that anyway now. I think in India there is a clinic that does one cataract surgery per minute. I think it's 40 or 50 seconds. They just rush them through. They do the left eye one day, anyone with a left cataract, on the right eye the next day, because sometimes they've gotten mixed up and taken the wrong non cataract out of a person's eye. But anyway, he did those surgeries just as fast as they do today with a rusty knife. He didn't sterilize or sanitize anything, and all kinds of other healing feats. There's a couple of videos on YouTube you can see. We put in Arigo, Arrigo, and it's pretty fascinating.
So he's almost like a Edgar Cayce, where because Edgar Cayce went into like a trance, and I don't I don't know if he performed any kind of surgeries or anything, but he would give advice. Edgar,
Casey was just advice, reams
right?
and reams and reams of advice. Now, when I was in junior high, they ran a book called The Search for Bridie Murphy by Maury Bernstein. And before the book was released, it was serialized in the Los Angeles Mirror, a now defunct paper. And in before I went into the ninth grade, we arrived in California, and I happened to read that. And I was astounded because I had not been introduced to the idea of reincarnation before. Well, in the installment, they mentioned, Maury Bernstein mentioned Edgar Cayce. There was a chapter on him in that book. So I happened to be, we lived just a matter of blocks away from a public library, a very small one. But someone must have been into metaphysics because there was Edgar Cayce, Paramahansa Yogananda, Madame Blavatsky, you name it, Churchwood, the hidden continent of Mu and all that. And so I got a metaphysical education before I got in the ninth grade. That summer I started on a reading spree. Then they released the book, and of course I bought the book. They made a really corny Hollywood movie out of it too. And then I became a true Cayce founder before he became popular. Back then, there were only three sources. Gina Sermonara, Many Mansions, which was more about the metaphysical reincarnation type aspect. Thomas Sugru, who was a famous biographer, presidents and people like that. He did one more of how he developed from a child and his psychic abilities then, and how he was a Christian, so it was really a shock to him to find out about reincarnation and things. And then Joseph Millard's Mystery Man of Miracles. I think that were the only three sources. This was before once Jess Stern came on the scene, it all exploded. Now I bet there's 1,000 books on Cayce, maybe more, and probably 20,000 or 15,000 with a chapter on Cayce or information about Cayce in it someplace. Yeah, he's exploded. Back then, I just happened to read that book, The Search for Bridie Murphy, and found out about Cayce. So
What?
he did not, to my knowledge, he did no hands on healing like other people have had. There was even a saint, they called her a saint in El Paso, that as a child started healing people, and supposedly her spirit rode at the front of the Mexican Revolution, Zapata and Pancho Villa and all of that. And she predicted she would die at 33, and she did, just like Christ. And she's anyone in El Paso, or a lot of people in El Paso, are familiar with her and her psychic powers and all the healings that she did, and the town she was banned from because she was again breaking the Catholic rules or the religious rules of what you were supposed to do. So, in other words, a lot of people have had these powers. And at one point, mesmerism was as popular as Elvis. I mean, everybody knew what mesmerism was, and it was a threat to the doctors. If you could come up to a person and in 2 minutes change their blood pressure back to normal with no drug, can you imagine how that would threaten the medical profession? So today, look at Wikipedia. Mesmerism. Oh, this was a false concept by Mesmer, who was a crazy guy, and actually suggestion was involved with it, but there was no magic fluid going between people. Well, that's not true. Anyone who's practiced muscle testing, have you ever done any of that muscle testing?
No,
A
I don't
lot of
think
people
so.
have. Here's your experiment. Have a person put out their arm like this, and
Mhm.
you do
Yeah,
this
I
on a
have.
few people because some people are more sensitive, and then just go down the central meridian, and then you'll find they're weaker. And when you go up, they're stronger. And don't tell them what you're going to do. Just, can we run a test here and go like that? Now, the police use this. I found out about that from a guy who worked for the Texas Highway Patrol. He said I was going to explain, I thought, applied kinesiology to him, and he said, "Can I do a demonstration?" So he did that to me. And he said, "You can also ask for their address, because if you say any number over two digits, it weakens you. So if I say I live at 13572 Blossom Drive, it's going to weaken me." And that gives you an advantage. Some people with defective immunity can be weakened for 5 minutes. Most people recover within 30 seconds or so if their immunity is working correctly. But you can imagine if you're in someone attacks you in an alley, you have a distinct advantage because they're considerably weaker, and you can strengthen yourself. Like a martial artist will do a technique like this, up their meridian, down the other person's meridian. Some people say this is meditation. If you call weakening yourself meditation, I don't call it that. And strengthening everything around you, it's really not true.
I thought mesmerizing was like a hypnosis. It's not.
No,
It's something different.
hypnosis is what they went by suggestion. Mesmerism, actually, you can you can give a person a drink of water and mesmerize the water, and then simply pour the water and affect a person 1,000 miles away with mesmerism. Today, people say that's impossible, but I wrote a book, an ebook on mesmerism and miracles. And I wrote it to show that it could be done, but I also studied with a Donald Lay who told me it's not a good idea to be affecting other people. The reason I wrote it, though, if other people can do it to you, why not eliminate the middleman and do it yourself? But we need someone else to do. We have a parental trauma. I just wrote about this on Facebook, by the way. where you go to the doctor because your parents always kiss the boo boo and take care of it. And so we turn our lives over to these people in white who are mostly interested in being greedy and giving us drugs. There are, and I've met them, dedicated doctors who really want to make a difference. But most of the people out there now are just greedy. I mean, we in the last I won't go into any details to get you in trouble here, but the last 4 years is an example. But it's been going on for decades and decades and decades. The AMA, Rockefeller medicine, all the way back a long time ago. It was not designed to heal people. It was designed to keep them in maintenance. Like, you don't want to cure kidney disease. You want to give them a drug that they have to take. You don't want to cure the thyroid. You want to keep them taking medication every day to make sure they take it. You don't want to cure an autoimmune disease. You want them on a regular drug. A cure, it's over in a day. You only sold your medicine once. You didn't sell it 365 days a year, maybe twice or three times a day in many cases, which is 1,000, and you make tons of money that way that you do not make when you cure something.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Casey, he would go in these trance, and I don't know, was he just feeling something within, or was another person coming into him and giving him all these advice? Because he was pretty specific, even with, I think, his girlfriend or wife or somebody had tuberculosis or something, and he specifically said you have to use the smoked wood from this apple something and breathe that in with and alcohol or so. I don't even know. Like, it was very specific and very odd, but how would he know this? And it worked,
Because we're
apparently.
yeah, we're out of our body at the same time. Now, he didn't need anybody to enter him like Arrigo did. If he did, he could have been a fixation of how it happened. But Casey would just go to sleep and kind of like a cosmic voice would speak to him, and nobody seemed to be in it seemed to be his higher self, you might call. And he knew specifics. It's interesting you talk about that. I believe that's the oak chip thing where you put 200 proof Tennessee whiskey and then you pour it on it and you breathe the smoke in. And I've done it. This was an O'Donnell Lay thing that he got from Casey because he was very familiar with Casey's work and even lectured at the Casey Center at one time with Casey's son, Hugh Lynn Cayce. But anyway, it's interesting you mentioned that remedy because that was one of the first things I experienced from O'Donnell Lay. That he had a friend in Tennessee that would bring that 200 proof whiskey, which was not available any place in Texas or any place else in the country, I think. And he would need that particular one for it to be effective.
Did that only help with tuberculosis or other things?
It helps well, we used it for just the flu at that time.
Oh.
Yeah, so, but tuberculosis, other things. A lot of so called diseases are curable. It was tuberculosis that this mathematician from India died, by the way, from at a young age. But tuberculosis has been cured by people and by mesmerism. So called fatal diseases. I had my friend Judy Utley. I think I told you she had spinal cancer, she had breast cancer, she had lung cancer. She continued smoking and lived 9 years. When the doctor gave her about a week, said, "Get your affairs in order. How did you even walk in this office to be tested?" And now there was a therapy where they burned a hole in her back with a black salve, and that created a counter shock because often a disease is a shock, and if you do a counter shock, it undiseases you. So a shock can give you a disease or it can take a disease away. Now, also, Judy was very advanced in many ways. Her will to live, I think, kept her around. She was supposed to leave when she gave us that diagnosis. I was there the day she got it. She came over to our friend's house. And I thought Judy's going to be gone in a week or two. She was making her plans. Then she decided she was going to fight it. And she lasted for 9 years. And her big fat mouth got her, though. She said, I want to live long enough to meet my soulmate. She met him. They both chain smoked together. She died, and he died a month later, or 2 months later. So there it is. I don't even know if she died of cancer or what she died of. I don't think it was cancer.
She met her soulmate.
I think it was completing her karma, if you want to get metaphysical.
Yeah. Yeah, I still don't understand what mesmerizing is. So that's not when you're in some kind of trance or of some
There's
sort?
energy, and actually the closest thing we have to mesmerism is applied kinesiology. I mean, if I do this to a person, I don't have to suggest. The body language is the suggestion. And a perfect example, I was on a radio show, AM radio, a long time ago, 1980, I think it was, maybe 81.
I don't know how
And
you have such good memory.
and anyway, I was showing the host on radio, the audience couldn't see, that it weakens and strengthens. He said, well, isn't that suggestion? You told me that weakens me and that strengthened me, so I went with it. And I said, okay, do you have anybody in the studio that's not listening to the show? Oh, yeah, we got an engineer back in the lunchroom. Can you bring him in and we'll do a demonstration for fun? He said, sure. So they call him in and he comes in and he doesn't know what I'm going to do. And I go like this. I'm going to do a technique to make you stronger and weaker. Oh, okay. So I said, this is going to make you, first I tested him. Okay, this is going to make you stronger than you've ever been before. And I went like this, which weakens. And then I tested his arm and it went right down. And he laughed at me. He said, that didn't work out very well. Oh, well, let me try something else. I acted like I was distressed about it not working. And then I said, okay, this is going to make you weaker than you've ever been before. It's going to be weaker now. It was strong. It's stronger, he said. I said, there we go. And the host said, ladies and gentlemen, I have to believe my eyes. I just saw something that I would not have believed before. He actually weakened the person when he said he was strengthening him, and strengthening is weakening by doing a movement up and down. Now you can do this movement too, and you can do this movement. This strengthens.
I can't see you.
Down on the you go down
You're
on
doing
the
this?
left and up on the right side with the blood
Okay.
flow. And I don't know if I told you about I would do classes in some of this energy work. And one time I found someone with toothpick arms. She was very thin. And she would get amazingly strong when I did the blood technique, down on the left, up on the right. So she said, can you show me how to do that so I can beat my boyfriend arm wrestling? And I said, sure. So she came back to me and said, guess what happened? I not only beat my boyfriend, I beat every guy at the party. and then she went into a restaurant called Fat Ernie's in Houston, Texas, and saw Muhammad Ali at a table. So she walked up to him and said, I challenge you to an arm wrestling match. And he thought she was crazy, so we'll never know if she would have beat Muhammad Ali or not. But that's how confident she was. So some people, again, can pick up that energy stronger than others, and some not as much. But you can develop it by meditation, by breath work, by qigong, by tai chi. There are a lot of techniques out there, yoga. All these techniques can strengthen the mind, and also association helps. Like, again, why did you pass that person? How come you could go around them because someone told me I could do it. Well, we're told you can't do this, you can't levitate, you can't make $1 million, whatever it is. They tell us all these things, and we begin to believe it. One of my teachers, Master Wu Dang Chen, said that experience is what you don't want. Because experience, oh, I can't make money on holidays because everybody's out of town. It's Super Bowl Sunday, so I can't make money doing this and this day. And he said that makes a fixation. Now that's suggestion. That is hypnosis. But then there are energy works too, where you can just walk around, and if you put yourself in life flow, you're protected. Usually you don't interfere with other people, but say I'm a passenger in a car and someone's driving recklessly, I go behind them and I do the blood flow behind them. It's still up on the left and down on the right because
So
it
you're doing,
reverses
are
in
you
the
doing
back.
this?
Yep. Yeah, basically up on the left and, down on the left and up on the right. So on the opposite side, it's the same movement, whether they turn
You're
around or
just
front,
doing
because the
this?
energy goes over the top of the shoulder. Right. Exactly. You follow the blood flow, basically, on both sides, the blood flow. And but I do it to a person driving because I'm in the car. If their reckless driving is going to kill me too, so I want them to be in good health so that they don't crash the car. And I put myself in life flow as something else. And many people, they won't even know what I'm doing. What the heck are you doing? They don't know. It might be someone that doesn't know I do this kind of thing. I said, I'm just doing a technique to be safe. That's all. So anyway,
Did
that
Ed
technique works by body language, which is a kind of mega suggestion, because body language is an ultimate language that is much more dependable. When you see an animal, you can tell, and it can be read so much that one time Master Chen was telling us that uh, you become your enemy. If you want to beat somebody that attacks you, you become them. And how can they beat themselves? So, what does he mean by that? He demonstrated on these professional teachers that hold my shoulders and attack when you're ready. And as soon as they would think about attacking him, he would poke them with his finger and paralyze them. Now, of course, I was not a Tai Chi teacher at that time. I ended up in one of their workshops though, and I thought I would like to experience that myself. So Chen looks at me and says, "Come over here, Adam." So I came over. He says, "Hold my shoulders. Okay, attack when you're ready." And as soon as I thought of it, he poked me and paralyzed me. I couldn't move. Then he said, "Do it again." So this time I'm going to do a different technique, right? Now, just as I'm about to do it, he pokes me in a different place and paralyzes me. So that's not your ordinary communication. It's a type of communication involved in, you can call it dowsing, radionics, orgone, whatever it is. It's an energy that we all have, and we marshal it in our cultural way. Tai Chi, yoga, Kundalini powers, all those things, the cities, they call them, the, what is it, 26 or 23 cities, whatever it is, all types of things. Make yourself big, leave your body, do this, do that. Those are all powers that we all have. I discovered mind hacking, not a psychic technique at all, just by experience. It was there. After that, I didn't have to read any books because each person was an encyclopedia of what their trauma was, their history, and their solutions to it as well.
That's incredible. um, did Edgar Cayce ever predict anything, or he never predicted
You
things?
know, he made some wrong predictions, but he made some right predictions too. There was a book called The Dream Game by Ann Charters. The Dream Game and Dream Power. At this moment, I don't know which one came first, but she wrote a very popular book on dreams and how to interpret them. In her second book, to my amazement, because I was a Cayce person for a long time, she said at the introduction to the book, I have discovered the American mystic Edgar Cayce and was astounded. All of the research I've found, he knew about in his readings. And then throughout that second book, she compares what he said, what they say, what he said, what they say, and it was right on. Other things he got wrong, like apparently Atlantis never came up out of the ocean. Maybe it's too early still. And some other predictions. I heard, I can't validate this for sure, that he said Hitler was a nice guy and he wasn't going to cause any trouble. That's what I heard, but I didn't read that in the book. And I've read quite extensively on Cayce. So he got a lot of things right, and some things he got wrong. According to O'Donnell Lay, a psychic can only get 80%. Until you master the environment, then you can only get 99%. But a psychic has to look through their own aura to see your aura or whatever else is going on. So they can't get themselves out of the way, in other words, which is the hardest thing to do because you're projecting what you're seeing on the energy. Many times what happens to you is your own guilt, fear, whatever, coming back on you. When you think about it, it appears. Some people, including myself, I've been afraid of something, and then something appears right in front of me that my worst nightmare, just like that, at the time when it happens. And that's clearly projection, where we put ourselves on the world and saying, often blame another person. You attacked me when actually you're attacking them or want to attack them. And so they wonder. You ever been around a person where you start to act like what they are afraid of? They say, people are always doing this and people are always doing that. One time I had a girlfriend and I was doing the same thing, playing the same game. I said, my ex-wife did this and did that and did this and did that. So my girlfriend reached over, grabbed my shoulder, and said, I'm not her. And that was one of the most therapeutically brilliant things I ever came across. It was just, I'm not her. And I woke up right away out of my complaints. Well, we all do that. And you've been around people like that. You've seen do that. They blame you for something, and you start acting like that because they expect you to. We did experiments too. When I was going to O'Donnell Lay School, we lived in an apartment, and 5 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment because we could save on rent to go to the school. None of us had much money. One lived in a walk-in closet. 2 of us in the living room and 2 of us in the bedroom. And one of the teachers spent the weekend with us when he came in to teach for the weekend, Dr. Ram. But anyway, at that time, we found that if you held a person's feet, you could read their minds easier. We'd think of names and do that. Now, that's not anything to do with mind hacking. At one time, I called it body dowsing and realized people are thinking this is a woo-woo thing. Mind hacking is not. It's perfectly no woo-woo about it at all. But you can do that kind of woo-woo thing by the experiments we were doing. Think of certain names. Also, back in the days when I took psychedelics, it definitely makes your ESP improve. I don't know if it's good for you or not, but definitely the first time I ever took it with my second wife, right away I went in and said, I'm thinking of a name. What is it? She said, Gertrude? I said, yes. So definitely it brings on your psychic abilities. And it's associated with Kundalini, the drugs, not with the Ovum's chakra, which begin here and go to the back of the head. By the way, if you want to feel your Uh, the eighth one is the medulla. You can't really feel it, but you can feel, if you feel in the back, there's a bump back there. And before that, a flat spot in the skull. So it's not a round skull like that. It has a ski slope and then a bump. That's the sixth chakra, the seventh chakra, and then the eighth one. There's eight for the ovum, is the medulla. Now that ski slope, my friend Frank Broski, the same person I talked about that I did that test with, he complained that he heard a ringing in his ear and he couldn't go to sleep. So he had to go to sleep with the television on full blast at night to go to sleep. Well, I remembered that that has something to do with the skull. And sure enough, I found out that to make that sound current greater in your ear, you push on that flat spot. Because he said, feel like I found this flat spot, but it's not in any anatomy book. They just have a round skull. And they don't have that little bump either. And so I found that you can increase it that way. Now he knew that pressure on it made it increase. He wanted to get rid of it. He didn't want that ringing in his ear. So he got a pump with a 40-pound pull and tried to pull his skull back into alignment, thinking there was something wrong having it flat back there. And of course, his creativity came from what they call the audible life stream. That is a ringing in the right ear. Left ear is often high blood pressure, but when it goes to the left ear and finally to the center of the forehead, then you're tuned in. And you also have more psychic abilities than the average person at that point. So concentrating on the sound, that's why you close your eyes, you see an inner light, and then you listen for the sound. You listen, and then the light will appear, and then you start to get more of these powers. But you also become healthier, have a better immunity, and become whatever spiritually advanced means. You know, no one seems to have an exact definition of what that means. But obviously, some people do advance to levels that other people don't have simply because they're not interested, or they have the wrong technique, or they don't apply enough due diligence. They're like dilettantes, you know. Oh, I think I'll do this for an hour. It didn't work. I quit. I did affirmations for 20 minutes and nothing happened. And meanwhile, all day they're saying, I don't have enough money. I'm poor. I'm having problems all day. And then they expect 20 minutes to get rid of 23 hours and 40 minutes.
That's true. What were
even
you
a
saying
even a
again?
physicist would say it doesn't work that way.
You were mentioning, so the ringing of the ear of the left side, that means high blood pressure. And what
Often
was
it
the right
does.
side?
Yeah, the right side, because the right side is where you come up into your body. Your blood flow will go up into the ear. We're basically a clockwise mechanism. Uh, Down on the left for the blood flow, most of it, and up on the right. How do our bowels work? Down on the left, out the body, and up on the water colon. The colon's coming up. So we have a lot of our energy coming up. Now, male and female, the reason many people will say the female is left and the male is right in patriarchal societies, of course they're going to say that. But the male is projective, meaning the penis ejaculates, the vagina absorbs. You go out on this side, down from the heart, down from the colon, and absorb up the other way. So our journey into the physical realm goes down into matter, to precipitate matter, and back up into the brain. Out of the brain into the body, where we do all these kind of things with our ambulators. I can make things with my hands. I can walk places with my feet. And then you come back up into the head. So the same happens in physiology before birth. The sperm does all the moving, all the traveling. All the ovum does is say, come here, big boy. Come here, big boy. I got your number. And So the brain just sits there and does nothing. The ovum, the brain, is often being called masculine and feminine down here, but the brain is actually feminine. It's the ovum. If you look at the spine, it's got a head of a sperm and a tail. And what we call kundalini, when the tailbone vibrates, is just a sperm swimming. That's all it is. That same wiggling motion to propel it through liquid.
Okay. So if you have high blood pressure and if your ear is ringing on the left side, or if you have tendinitis, is that coming from the ear or is that coming from the head?
Actually, it's coming from the brain,
From the
first over the
brain.
middle of the head. That's why
Where?
that's why when I read about the master saying that you could eventually hear it in your forehead, I met one crotchety old chiropractor in Oregon who actually complained about hearing the sound current ringing in his head. And I told him the same thing Adonale told me, or told someone else that came in with that ringing. He said, "Is it in the right ear?" He said, "They said, yeah." He said, "It took me 18 years to get that ringing, and I wouldn't cure you if I could." And I told that chiropractor the same thing. He was a very unusual chiropractor and obviously more spiritually advanced than I, because I haven't got it here. I get it here. Sometimes my blood pressure gets higher, it goes over here. I used to be able to manipulate it over. As you get older or think you're getting older, it becomes harder to do. You have less chi, less energy, less orgone to propel it, because spirituality actually is a health function and longevity function. You know, you can be sick and be spiritual. Many people have been, but because we have karma, but it takes energy to either go up inside your body or to do things outside. There's an energy exchange on anything we do in life. And the more energy we can reserve, the better it is. So you can't exactly store energy any more than you can store breath. But people get mixed up with that about chi. They think, I'm going to store all this chi and walk around. That's like me saying, I'm going to store all this breath. I got to breathe out. What you can do, though, is practice storing it till finally you can hold your breath for 4 or 5 minutes, or that yogi I've often talked about that held his breath for 40 days. They buried him, and when he came up, he was still alive. To the British's surprise, they thought, this guy is going to kill himself. These are primitive Indian people. Let him show let us show that the British are smarter and that they believe in these fantasies, like the amazing Randy would say. But they dig him out and he's alive. They had a guard. They buried him in a coffin. They put him in a stone sepulcher. They had armed guards 24 hours a day to make sure no one snuck in and pumped in any air or anything like that. And the guy was alive. Took him about 5 or 10 minutes to revive him because he was really in deep.
I'm sorry again about the tendinitis. My dad has tendinitis, so I think for him he keeps saying that it sounds like a vacuum.
Yep.
like a. So what is that? What does that mean? How does that happen? How do you get rid of it? Or
it means he's supposed to meditate. Does he meditate?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I don't
tell him
think so.
he needs to meditate. Now, is it more in his left or his right ear?
I didn't know that it could be either. I thought it was just both, to be honest.
Yeah, because it's
I
always
don't know.
more pronounced in one. And
Oh.
sometimes, just like our brain hemispheres switch every hour, they tell us an hour and a half, but a healthy person, it's every hour with the acupuncture meridians. Your breath in your nostril will change too. Well, your ear often will go back and forth like that. The idea is to keep it over to the right, though, and to concentrate it if you can. Now, be aware that you can have an ear damage.
Mm.
You can sometimes the buzzing will go away by the Epley maneuver. It's any any YouTube video will show you the Epley Epley maneuver, and in fact, last week I looked up from the computer and got dizzy. And right away, we rechecked the Epley maneuver because Byron Gow went and did the technique on me because you get these little otoliths, the same thing that is in our pineal gland that gets stuck in the passage. And of course, the ear and the pineal have a lot to do with our balance. When people are in balance, it's either the pineal or the inner ear. Well, these little otoliths form in both places, so they're obviously related. This is the third ear. Just like we have a third eye, we have a third ear too in the same place, basically. So it's often can even work on buzzing in the ears. You can have deficiencies of zinc, you can have deficiencies of different things, you can have incorrect breathing that does it. There's a lot of other techniques can do it. But also, it's an opportunity to meditate. For those who know about the sound current, it's the elevator up into the higher realms. And you get psychic powers if you want them, or if you just want to have better immunity and stick around longer, that's the way to do it.
Interesting. Well, I have to ask my dad what side he hears it more on.
Those
And
realms,
try.
by the way, Adonale had a unique way of talking about the 8 realms we go through. He called it matter acting on matter. That's the physical part. Ouch, 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 ouch. You hit the physical part. Then you have energy working on matter. That's electrical force on it, and it's represented by water. Then you have consciousness acting on matter. That's where I can read something on it without affecting it, but I can consciousness acting on matter. Then energy acting on energy, which is basically the atomic bomb and all the energy matrix we have that we live in, a connection. And then then we go through what's called the rings past naught. This is people who get above the fourth chakra or the fourth realm in this area at the top of the head. They basically then go to what's called consciousness acting on energy. That means you can start to woo woo things. And then you get the consciousness acting on consciousness, which is basically everything is energy. Everything is a movie. You're at the state Neo was, where he's flying around out of the telephone booths and doing whatever he wants. So that's mind acting on mind. Then the 7th level is what they often call the ascended master, which both O'Donnell and Jung agreed it has no practical value. You're there, but you're not in life engaged. You come down as a descended master at that point, and then the 8th level is beingness acting on beingness, which is well, the ascended master is beingness acting on consciousness, meaning you're in beingness, which is of course to be, but to be doesn't necessarily have to be conscious. But where metaphysicians make a mistake, they think consciousness comes before beingness. But unless you are being, unless you be, how can you be conscious? If something isn't there, it's not conscious. So one time Donald Lay pointed up into the sky, and you see all those vast stars up there, a huge universe. It does take matter to operate it, but it can fit in a thimble. The entire universe can fit in a thimble. Everything else is acceleration. The Matrix, the movie, the consciousness acting on consciousness, mind acting on mind. And that's where we sell ourselves short. We have these abilities and we don't use them because we don't believe we have them. I've met a lot of people who have had amazing mind power. Some of them have used it rather inappropriately sometimes, and some of them have used it really well. But it just shows you how many people do have these abilities and how anybody can have them. No one needs to be left out of this if they really have a true desire to do it. That's what they need first. You have to say, I wish to do this. I desire to do this. And from that desire, then it will fall into place eventually.
And that brings us to an end of another episode of the Sensible Hippie Podcast. A huge mahalo to Adam Bergstrom for joining us today and sharing his insights on Edgar Cayce and Dowsing. I also want to express my gratitude to my YouTube and podcast Ohana for all of your wonderful comments, your thumbs up, and for sharing your favorite episodes. If you've enjoyed our conversation, don't forget to give us that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and continue sharing your favorite episode. Let's continue to grow this Ohana. So until the next time, stay curious, stay sensible, and keep exploring the mysteries around us. Bye!
Before things didn't go right, now I pay the price. It's keeping me up at night. I still see you like a ghost in my room. Now I know the truth, that it'll always be you. You are the love of my life. I won't mess it up this time. You are the love of my life. One more chance tonight. You're inside of my head, baby, I'm on the edge. No, I never meant to leave our love for good. Stuck in my mistakes, you're my worst habit to break. No, there's not a day where I don't wish I